Welcome back to the podcast. It's your boy K.Sloan. Here my boy Jay Jones. Another one, another L. And we got a special guest with us today, man. Special guest with us today. Dude's doing a lot of work in the community that is to be applauded. And when I heard about what he had going on from my partner Jeremy Harris, shout out to Jeremy. I was like, bro, we got to get him on. I talked to Jay Jones. He was like, yeah, it's got to be a go. So I reached out to him on IG, and we had to get him on here to spread some light, you know what I'm saying? So I'll let him introduce himself.
Will do. My name is Chris Daughtery, aka C. Dot. Went from boys to gentlemen. Super excited to be on the podcast. Thank you, Mr. Sloan. My fellow Cowboy fan. We're struggling right now, but we're gonna get that thing together. Mr. Jarrell, we just appreciate y'all sharing your platform with me.
No doubt, brother. No doubt. Jay Jones, what you got for the people today? What you want to tell the people today, man? What you got?
Hey, man. First and foremost, I am a Cowboy fan, and we lost the game, but it's all love. It's all love. I'm happy.
Hey, but you know the silver lining to the Cowboys losing. Shannon Sharp about to be on Skip head. That's the silver lining to losing.
Yeah, that's already happening.
Yeah. But besides that, I think we got a new president this week. We didn't.
Well, hold on. Before we get into that though, Chris, just real quick, as an overview, just so the people know what you.
Oh yeah, you got it.
We're gonna dive into that. But Chris, just let the people know exactly what you got going with, your book and some of the things you got in the works, man, because you got a lot of things going.
They got the book ready.
We got the book ready, Jay Jones.
I need a signed copy.
Hey, we on there, good sir. So basically, from Boys and Gentlemen, of course, as I just showed, is a written piece of literature. Definitely go. You can get that on Amazon or FB2G.net to go and grab you a copy of From Boys and Gentlemen. It is a collaboration of true stories, and the focus is really dealing with the issue of fatherlessness. But it takes the totality complex of it, where it's not just looking at the absence of the man, but how that impacts both the child and the single mother, the community that's surrounded behind it. So we open the door for some difficult conversations to be had. With the mentoring program, we really operate off of 4 pillars. So, our focus is understanding that the absence of a father doesn't equal the absence of responsibility. Someone or something is going to take that place. So what are the focus? Our 4 pillars that we operate off of is emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, communication skills, and critical thinking. And so by really instilling those 4 pillars, it makes education possible. It really makes it possible for a lot of other things to take place. It gives kids, a lot of young Black at-risk kids. I never shy away from the fact that I'm targeting young Black kids. I work with all kids, but I definitely work on targeting my young Black men, because we see media, it hurts. It's hard to talk about that without seeing George Floyd, Tamir Rice, and the countless others that are out there, where you're really watching these people lose their lives in broad daylight on camera. And you come to a perspective of our first step into that is really preparing our young men to be able to at least stay in school. I think me and Kerry had that conversation that there is an actual algorithm that privatized prisons use to determine how many prisons to build and what size based off of how many kids drop out the 7th grade. So when you look at factors and positions like that, instead of sitting back constantly pointing the finger, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever you say, at the end of the day, we got babies that need to be tended to. So I'm not worried about your party affiliation. If this young man doesn't have the emotional intelligence to be able to carry that out through communication and conflict resolution and develop his critical thinking, he's still in the same boat of being able to be not seen as human before we even have the opportunity to advocate for them. So the mentoring program, we give people the opportunity to express themselves in 3 major ways. The first area is personal relationship, and that's where we really look at it from romantic to business to family, peer, whatever it may be, and we really dive into those relationships, understanding what we already think. A lot of times dealing with things uncomfortable like molestation, sexual preferences and things like that. That's hard conversations that we often ignore. but they're absolutely needed in our community with our young men, and then taking it from that standpoint, going into career and education, because we need to tell the truth about education. I'm all for going to college. I'm all for bettering yourself. If there's a big if that come with that, if you really have a career lined up for it. We often push kids to secondary education, but we don't have that conversation of how many people with master's degrees working at Walgreens trying to pay them student loans back.
We talked about that. We talked about that a couple of episodes ago. It's about those degrees, and it really doesn't ensure what you think it ensures. You know what I'm saying? You just know you got the paper. It's more so of the respect that you get from everybody else that you went to school with. I mean, that's
fair. So, just like an old head told me once, he was like, man, I'm all for them degrees and everything, but you gotta understand them IDs is like the degrees, they just like getting in, getting a ticket into the club. You still gotta go get the girl. I'm like, oh, okay, bet. Understand that and putting that into perspective. So, us really building community, us really building opportunities. And understanding the importance. Like they'll tell you education, education, education. The same mouth that repeated that to you will tell you without impunity. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, they will.
How do those two things go together? So you telling me I can go build up all the knowledge I want and it still might literally end up in a place of lack of usefulness if I don't have the right network and I don't have the right connection. So really putting that into place. So we talk about internships, we talk about entrepreneurship, and we don't just talk about it. We put that along with our work program. So, we've had young men that have worked through the summer and were able to get $500 to $1,000 in cutting grass and be able to go back. And I think one of the best things you can do for a young man is teach him about being able to contribute to his home. And that's our third part. Community contribution, home contribution. So those young men that were able to go and obtain legal forms of employment and then come back and say, mama, don't worry about it. I got the light bill this month, or I'm taking everybody out to dinner, and allow him to have that pride in being able to provide, that pride of contributing, that pride of having, just the ability to move the way you want to, and instilling that work ethic in place. And then, I feel like it's our responsibility, and the things that we're doing right now is to create those places for them to either walk into, or that place where we cover them and encourage them so that they can go out and be another person to create a platform for someone else. So those three areas are really where we play it out. So that's pretty much from Boys and Gentlemen, our focus, and really making an impact in the community.
I like it.
That's dope, man. I love it. And then, man, I think it's right aligned with like what me, myself, and Jay Jones, we always talk about, the things that we trying to get going as far as a nonprofit as well. Are y'all a nonprofit, or are y'all a different identification than that?
So this is, and it's funny you say that, because the previous video y'all just did, the link that you sent me as I was watching it, y'all hinted at DBA, doing business as. I think it's important when we really start educating ourselves on the levels and things that we are, because you got people that are pushing out there for LLCs or nonprofits or whatever the case may be, and we're not really set up for that. So basically how From Boys to Gentlemen is, it's a program and it's also a DBA. But the nonprofit component, we also have a nonprofit called Wealth Empowers the People, and it offers a fiscal agent for us. So that's actually a nonprofit that me and Donald Burton, that we have, and we started, and it are official with the IRS. But with that, a lot of people don't understand, when you go to apply for grants and other things, you can use a fiscal agent with that 501c3 to be able to utilize and obtain funds. And, the proper way to do that, you pay a administration fee. So if you got $150,000 grant, you pay that administration fee of 10% to that person, allowing you to use, or that entity allowing you to use a 501c3. So we're DBA From Boys to Gentlemen, and some of the other programs that we're putting together, but the actual nonprofit is called Wealth Empowers the People.
Oh, so you have a DBA and you have the nonprofit.
Yes, because From Boys to Gentlemen, I felt like it would be more powerful as a program. Versus doing that. So the Wealth Empowers the People, that's what, because we have a sister program that's going to be coming out in January, and it's called Queens Take Your Crowns. So that's the sister program for the From Boys to Gentlemen. And then we have several other programs that we're going to put out into place. But every program necessarily doesn't need to be a 501c3. And that's some of the things that we kind of put out there because it's what it sounds nice. We're going to get a nonprofit and it's good intention, but we really need to start being focused on our education of what these particular things are because we're wasting a lot of money. Like you having to pay certain certifications and you got people that go out there and the LLC sound nice, but you're not getting enough income to deal with all of the things that come along with an LLC. And you don't have the assets that need to be protected in the LLC. So, having that conversation about what you really have is important. So yes, from Boys and Gentlemen is a DBA and a nonprofit. The 501c3 is called Wealth Empowers the People.
And I got a question real quick, and the J. Jones, I'm gonna let you take it. So when you're talking about a DBA and an LLC, right? What is the biggest benefit that you feel like you got for Boys and Gentlemen versus a LLC for Boys from Boys and Gentlemen, like for the program? What was the benefit?
The biggest benefit was the lack of responsibility. Basically, what a DBA is simply doing business as. So you can go and you can open bank accounts. When people write checks, they can write to that particular entity. Just being able to put your name out there. There's so much flexibility. Now, the LLC adds a lot more security, but if you don't need it, you're paying for stuff that you're not prepared for. So the DBA allows you to really build your brand until you reach that place of where you will actually need an LLC and all those other components to go to it. So my benefit, because in essence, from Boys and Gentlemen is me. It's me and my wife. Right. So, that's the fiscal responsibility in that place. If I go out and try to do LLC, you start looking at boards and all the other people that you're trying to add into it. With a DBA, I can put from Boys and Gentlemen out there. You can write a check to it. And whatever county that I apply for that DBA, I'm up for business. And I can go out there and do all the things I need to do. Open bank accounts, set out marketing, and do things like that. Whereas, the LLC, it sounds nice, but like I said, you have to be ready for it. Everybody want to go, to college and hoop or play football until they got to do them 2-a-days. Right. It's a whole different ball game. Everybody ain't built. Everybody ain't built for that. I used to watch my homeboys at ACU. I'd be like, oh no.
Oh, hey, so is this the Boys, the Gentlemen? You said apply for it in every county. Are you low? Are you in Abilene right now? Are you trying to expand? What's up with that?
For the DBA, it is just in Abilene, but from Boys and Gentlemen, it's a movement. Okay. The focus is, I've had the opportunity to go and speak in prisons. I spoke at UT. I've spoken in Arkansas, all these different places. Hook 'em, we with it, but
man, got a big UT fan.
Hey, we own it. But I've had these opportunities to go out here and do these things, but the focus remains the same. The things that I hear y'all talking about, that empowerment, and I always tell people, I don't shy away from being intentionally focused on Black people in the Black community, because I feel like us being genuinely specific about empowering the Black community goes into all other communities when we establish ourselves. That's like any part of your body. If you know that your legs are weak and you keep coming into the gym and you hitting that bench press, you limited. Hey, you need some squats, you need some leg extension, you need to really develop the place. And I feel like, when people talk about America and, us being one and united, we a body, bro. We're not all the same body part. And I think it's important for us to be able to recognize that, and for the America to really go into that dream that we try to sell and put out there. Our communities need to be whole. We need to start developing our families. We need to come into ownership. We need to come into these places where we can actually contribute to this dream instead of getting pimped for the dream.
Bro, you know what that made me think of? I had heard a quote that said, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, when you say that, that's exactly what I'm thinking. It's like exactly, we are a body. So when we say
that sound good, but what happens when you ain't got no boat and you just out in the water? A rising tide gonna drown that tail, and that's where we at.
That's true.
You gotta build the boats.
We gotta build the boats. We gotta build the boats. Facts. And I love, bro, J. Jones. You feel what I'm saying? The brother out here, he out here.
We need this guy. We need this guy on the team.
Hey, look, man. You mess around speaking them facts like that, brother. You might be a permanent member. I might just go ahead and come out the can. So we're gonna have to go ahead and.
Hey, we own it. Partnership.
That's the start right there. Brotherhood for real.
For real.
Absolutely.
We got some ideas, or Sloan got this idea. We're gonna have to tell you about it.
Yeah, we'll talk after the time.
Hey, this definitely not gonna be the only conversation. We gonna keep this bad boy moving.
All right, bet. Well, I was about to say, but you talking about the body, especially America. This is what I was going to say. It's kind of introduced to what I was about to say anyway. The changing of the Presidente of America.
Orange man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Orange man. What he said?
Baby in chief. Yeah.
Oh man, that guy.
Hey, you can say a lot before you even go into that. You can say a lot of things about this man. Hate him, like him, love him, whatever. You can't say that the past 4 years been boring.
Ain't been boring.
You cannot say that. You didn't know what that Joker was gonna say.
We got a president that tweet more than me. He tweet more than I do.
Yeah, more than 16-year-old girls. Like he tweet like
smashing records.
Smashing records, man.
Smashing records on hitting the Twitter feed.
So speaking of that dude, well, let's talk about let's see what we foresee or what we hope to foresee in this new dude. What do y'all think Mr. Biden has to do to catch up almost? Because I feel like, especially with our community, I feel like for the last 4 years, we've been feeling like we have a president that glorifies almost racism, almost somebody that doesn't really care about our community. So how do we get back to
It goes back to what we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we come into a place where, and I'm speaking specifically for Black people right now. Again, we're going to be specific, hit it right to the head. Sometimes we get too emotional on things, and sometimes we calling things racism that ain't really necessarily racism. And it comes more to a perspective of we don't understand that they benefit off of our demise. Just like we talked about the school to prison pipeline. It's easy to point at that and, have the emotional feel to it or try to bring that moral reference. But then you got to look at the paper trail, bro. They benefit. Like as I told y'all before, if I have a algorithm that tells me how many privatized prisons to invest in, how many people that I can suggest that are going to walk in and make sure that my prison is at full capacity. If I have that and I'm a lobbyist for a legislator, am I interested in having laws that make it more difficult for people to be locked up? Probably not. So you look at that from the perspective of, it's not so much the way I always say for Black people, sometimes we not ready to deal with the predator. We not ready to handle the predator, but it's upon us to become more difficult prey. And I think that's what it comes into place when we start teaching these young men these opportunities and we come with that collectiveness. Even with my mentoring program, when I'm able to do partnerships with schools and come in and do some of these trainings and these consulting, when I walk in the door and I have kids that I have now established to be able to have an advocacy for them. Sometimes that's just a simple thing. Even with any of the young men, young ladies that I work with, whether it be from teen night at the Boys and Girls Club or just kids I work with, period. Even my own kids, they're only 10 and 7, and my youngest will be 1 in a couple of days. But the focus that I always tell them, if you get pulled over by the police, this ain't the time for you to audition and try to show how articulate you are. This ain't the time for you to try to press that issue. The very first and only thing I want to come out your mouth, because it halts all things after that, is, can I speak to my father? Can I speak to my mentor? And I tell them, for the specific reason of a lot of these police officers need to know that there's somebody else to answer to, because you respond a lot differently when you think this is a kid that don't even know who his father is, when there's no type of agency that I have to deal with as far as any type of connections, power, or know-how. Like, the reality is, if you pull over my son, I can call the mayor today. How many people can really say that? Like, it comes to that perspective. You show up to the police station with the mayor, that's a lot different than you showing up in a, walking fetal position, which a lot of people are for just reason. When we allow ourselves to share that agency, and for a kid to be able to call Mr. Chris or be able to call a Jeremy and be able to say, hey, I'm in this situation and I need somebody to come and advocate for me because this police officer ain't doing me right, or this business is responding this way, or this teacher, or whatever the case may be, we need to be able to walk through those doors and advocate for our kids. So, you know, when you look at things that you're talking about with the president, the racism, he didn't create it. It's been here.
He definitely did.
Like, if anything, he made it fashionable for a lot of people. You know, you got teachers that are boldly saying with students who may be immigrants and that are Mexican, you're boldly allowing kids to make the chance to build a wall. Like, what does that do to a kid's psyche that may have a relative that's dealing with immigration right now? We in Texas. Like, we got plenty of people that are dealing with that pressure on a daily basis. And you have the audacity to allow a student, or even participate yourself in making a chant of build a wall, or send them back, or embody the mindset that they're rapists. And man, it's intentional, if I could say it best. So, you know, when it comes to really talking about healing the country, I don't think politics is anywhere remotely close to the steps that we need to take in order to do that. When we start really being able to develop ourselves from an emotional standpoint, a mental health standpoint, I know that's a taboo conversation in the Black community, but us redefining what mental health means, it's not just mental illness. Us really coming in and saying, I need to make sure that you ain't stressed to the point where you're not even healthy enough to help your kids because you've been working so much.
I want to piggyback real quick off what you said, Chris, because when you said about it going to be on us as far as with the racism that we saw that was glorified at times with Donald Trump being in office, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be on us to be able to build within ourselves, like what you're doing with your program and creating programs, these kids having mentors, us being able to identify with and understand like what the real issue is. We got to fix ourselves, right? Because nobody else is going to fix us, especially not politics. So when Donald Trump is out there saying these crazy things or whatever, and he's influencing, you know what I'm saying, your neighbor to say some wild stuff that you like, man, like, I didn't know you was thinking like that. It really ain't going to change too much. I mean, now that we got Joe Biden in office, that's why I want people to really understand. I don't think that now that Mr. Joe Biden is in office, now all of a sudden these social issues that we are talking about so much are just going to be fixed. You know what I'm saying? It's not.
If it didn't go away with Obama, it's definitely not going away with Joe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, he's the president of the United States, bro. He got to answer to so many different people. I mean, it's like the thing is, like you're talking about lobbyists, when we are trying to, you know, build us up, we need to be putting money into our people that we want to be in office and things like that, and more people.
Absolutely.
I'm excited about change. I think change is good in this situation, especially. I think we needed some new
blood.
Something new around
some
there.
Air.
Yeah,
like my auntie say, we need some air.
Yeah, we need a little air. We need a little bit of air. And now we got a sister, you know what I'm saying, the vice president spot. You know, I love seeing that as well as far as the history for our country. But you know what I'm saying, just the idea behind a savior being in office, I think we need to ditch that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. we don't need to sit here and say that we got a savior that's ever gonna sit in that chair.
Right.
If his name ain't Jesus.
If his name ain't Jesus, go ahead and know you're gonna have to figure it out.
Hey, tell you the truth, we gotta be careful even saying that. Jesus might burn this bad boy down. We don't want to talk about that. There's been a lot of table flipping and and all of that. Witchcraft.
Look, I can't help y'all.
Not my name. Not. Hey, so we gotta be careful. But I'm 100% with you, and I think there's a fine line to be drawn, because I want people to hear me clearly. I'm not saying that we got to fix all of our own problems, because a lot of them we ain't create. We just operating off of them. I don't know if you got a chance to check out the Willie Lynch letters that I was telling you about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you come to a perspective, and I want to give a shout out to some of the ladies that are doing things here in Abilene. This one lady in particular, her name is Christy Newton, and they talk about allies. When I say she an ally, she don't play at all. You know, she even created a place where it's called restorative circles, where we're able to come and have those difficult conversations about race. And this is a white lady, you know, a teacher at AISD. And what I appreciate about her the most is how well she listens, and her vulnerability in being able to admit, hey, I didn't know this was going on. How do we move forward? What can we do? What can be done? And at one of the last meetings that we had, one of the conversations we really put out there, this is a two-party job in regards to, hey, white people, we need you to go and deal with those people that are in places of power where your words are carry more weight than us. And in the meantime, we're going to start dealing with some of this trauma that we never allowed to have any opportunity to change, all the way back from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration, to all these things that impact us from that date all the way to 2020. So it has to be able to have conversations. We have to be able to really come in and even be legitimate when it comes to talking about politics. And I think that's our obstacle. We don't have nothing to offer but a vote. What happens when we get to send our representatives and we have a connection of actual resources? I'm not just talking about money, but actual resources. Think about the ability, and we saw it a little bit with the NBA, but thinking about the ability to be able to come together and collectively say, we have enough equity, we have enough buy-in, we have enough deposit into our younger generation that we could come out and tell 45% of the NBA or NFL that they're going to sit out on any random Sunday if they don't meet our demands. You see how stuff starts to shut down. What happens when that goes through with the music industry or any type of entertainment industry? You do realize that there were colleges, institutions. Now keep in mind, these are universities. They're supposed to be there for education to pass out them degrees we was talking about. Do you know there were colleges that were considering not even opening if they couldn't play football? How does that work? You already showing your hand to say what's the most valuable thing, and 85 to 90% of your team is black.
You know what? I on my front on that, I feel like when you talk about, okay, like those schools that said they weren't gonna come back, right, because of the situation, you know, like, okay, we can't play football, we ain't coming back. The money is literally the only thing that matters here.
That's it.
That's it. I was talking to my mama about this maybe a couple of days ago, and it's like we got to get to a position, you know, where we can say, hey, look, we could put our money up where our agenda is. You know what I mean? When we're talking about, you know, the change that we want to see and things of that nature. And I think we got to make sure that we are. I really do believe in us creating that value within us and building each other, because sometimes we forget about each other, right? We don't always come together like a fist. We always be working like a hand that's spread out, and we all doing our own thing. You feel what I'm saying? And that's what I love about what's going on right now, is that now we are coming together more so than we ever have in my lifetime that I've seen in my show.
Absolutely.
And I know y'all could probably attest to the same thing. So I think that's the
absolutely. And even in what you're saying, and my point that I'm really trying to push, before we get to the finances, we're going to have to deal with the mistrust. We're going to have to deal with the fact that we got generations of being told, and I speak for myself. Let's see if y'all had the same experience. It wasn't white people that told me not to trust other black people. It was my family. Like, that was us. That was embedded into us for whatever particular reason, and it just carried on. And it's nothing that we broke. We didn't break that chain. We didn't break that cycle. So even coming down to it, some of the people we say we couldn't trust, like I said, they may have had mental illness. They may have had a situation where they didn't have those resources. And I think Tupac said it best, like, we're going to knock for a little bit and tell you we hungry while you in there eating. We're going to knock. We're going to knock a little louder. Eventually, we're going to kick that bad boy. We're going to kick that door in and come get some food because we're hungry. And it comes to that place of, we have established a mindset of we focus on resources, money, and we don't take care of the back end of that, which is restoring our families. When we really get to the place where young black men are understanding that they're not inferior because they are taught about Mansa Musa, because they do know about Kemet, they do know about history outside of just whatever they told you, where Columbus came over here and just created this wonderful thing, like
history, not his story. Yeah,
exactly. So coming to a place, even if we want to take his story, make sure his story look like me, like, and come to that perspective of giving a young man. And we see that power of representation in everything. Like, you look at something as simple as how many artists have changed the narrative on so many things of what a person can do. Think about, you know, in the 1990s, 1980s, you think you could be a black skateboarder? That wasn't a thing to do. There wasn't no space for that. Like, even if you liked it, you couldn't go out there and try to create no YouTube channel and be self-sufficient on that, that wasn't something that was embraced. But when people come and they see somebody that looks like them, that's capable of doing something, that's a powerful tool. And that's an intentional tool that's been used on so many different things. So, you know, you look at all the young Black girls that are going to be inspired by Kamala Harris. That's not a bad thing, but I don't want to be limited to just politics. Like, I want us to start having a conversation about that lost history that we have, even within our own country. So we talk about things like patents. Bro, they didn't create this stuff. They just they just got the patent. You had slave owners that had to bring their slave to the patent office to be able to show them how it worked in order to develop the patent. So you literally Jerry Jones that bad boy. But it's one thing to get credit for the win. They marking the touchdown for him. So imagine him getting credit for touchdowns for Emmitt Smith. And we come out and we watch Emmitt run them and then come back and say Jerry Jones is the touchdown leader. Like, he didn't even touch a football. Yeah. But that is exactly how that wealth was developed over so many times and that ownership. So I think it's important that we start dealing with a unwinding of these false narratives and really come to a standpoint of little Black boys and little Black girls seeing our faces, seeing a Carrie, seeing a Jarrell come and speak life into them and have that experience, because we have a lot of predominantly successful young Black people, and the only person that spoke any type of wellness to them was white. And sometimes that's an intentional aspect of where we go. So we have to be intentional in understanding how powerful it is for them to see somebody come and speak that life to them, show that interaction, give them that path. So I think that's super powerful. Before we get to any of the conversation about politics, we can't even take advantage of a lot of the benefits that it would afford because we don't have the collateral, we don't have the capital, we don't have the representation. So I think that's the first step before we even start entertaining any of those other things.
Yeah, got to build that confidence, man. You got to build that confidence. You see somebody doing something you never thought you could do, it makes you be like, oh man, like a Black man did that. Like, oh, you know, let me get to work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
like
big.
Even with one of the little block parties that I did right across the street at one of I live right next to the hood. It's an apartment complex called Abilene North, and I did a block party over there. You know, we just got some air castles. I grilled, took some hamburgers and hot dogs over there. Had some face painting and stuff. Had a couple people that came volunteered and helped me just to do something for the kids. The kids loved it. Had a little Black boy walk up to me. First question he asked me, he was like, "Hey, where the white man that sent you here?" I was like, "Oh, dang." I couldn't even act like I didn't know where he was coming from because that's the norm. And I said, "You know, it wasn't no white man that sent me here." He was like, "Oh, well, like, okay, why you here then?" Like that, he went from, oh, a white person to come and do this, then okay, then why you doing this? It came to like, hey man, let me shake your hand. My name is Chris Daughtery. He was like, you did this? And it wasn't from a credit standpoint, but I needed him to see somebody like, hey, and guess what? I live across the street. Oh, for real? Oh man, like you see that light in the face, like I can do something other than sell drugs. I can do something other than play football. Or come out with a rap CD. I can come out and show you. I think it's important for them to see that building block. Like, don't just let LeBron James can come and do stuff that I couldn't even dream about doing in this place. But it won't be the same as somebody that they get to walk across and see him playing outside with his kids, see him loving on his wife and being respectful right into their presence, and they can see on a daily basis in their neighborhood.
So, Chris, I got a question for you. For the people that would say, right, because, you know, you got people that are going to oppose any thought, you know, because even though we're trying to uplift ourselves, looking at the history of what we've had, every time we try to uplift ourselves, what ends up happening is we get a lot of kickback, right? We get a lot of kickback. Mm-hmm. So the people that would oppose what you're saying is to like saying, okay, in this neighborhood, that same kid that's next door to a white kid, and they hear that conversation, and they're like, well, what about my son, right? What would you say to that parent? What would be your response to that parent that, you know, what about my son? You know, you're trying to uplift this young Black kid. What about my son? You know, he doesn't have a lot of money. He doesn't come from much either. They live in the same neighborhood. They go to the same school. What would you say to that parent?
I actually spoke at McMurray this past week, and so I was lecturing for a couple of the classes, and that kind of came up because a lot of things I do, we deal with things like white privilege and stuff. One of the biggest kickback and pushback on white privilege is like, we poor. White privilege is not secluded just to money. So, being able to have that conversation. So instead of hitting with the white privilege, I was like, did your parents ever had a conversation with you of what to do when the police pull up? He was like, no. I said, did you ever sit down and have a tear-jerking conversation on how you was going to have to be 10 times better than the black kids that was out there? No? Okay. I dare you to go find 10 black people right now that haven't had that conversation in their home. You go talk to 20 black fathers, find them for me, that even if they're in an affluent neighborhood, they don't still have some type of anxiety about whether the policeman is going to see the white kids or them first. Mm-hmm. Is there going to be where you were alone and what is this black person doing in this white neighborhood? You might be the richest person in the whole neighborhood. But the reality is they see my face first. And then coming into that in our culture, I tell them, I was like, because I had somebody ask me, he was like, ain't there such thing as black privilege? I was like, yeah, pick up basketball. Even if you colder than me, they're going to pick me first because I'm black. And then that's pretty much, other than that, they assume immediately that I can fight. They assume that my genitalia is larger than my white counterpart. Like those, I guess you would consider those privileges, but you show me the black privilege where it is beneficial when it comes to the legal system. Like you can ask them genuine, serious questions and be like, okay, here's my question. If you were about to go before a jury and you were innocent, would you rather go in with the assumption that you're a black man or a white man? And I'm asking white people this. So sometimes they know these things based off of what they're doing, but it's counteractive, like counterproductive to what they want to say, what they want to believe. So they're struggling. So these things are difficult and they know. But the reality is, when I can box it in, like, black people just make an excuse. Show me the white counterpart to George Floyd with the same repercussion. Like I ain't just talking, I'm not saying white people don't get killed, but you showed me the cop that went and killed any type of classified white person and they didn't have to pay heavily for it. That they got to push those same narratives. It's not saying it's impossible, but it's far less likely. The little white girl that got shot over on the East Coast by the black officer, her family got 20 mil. Like, offer it, and the officer going to prison. We're not talking about that, but we sitting at a place right now where they charging people for shooting walls and not Breonna Taylor. I'm not interested in that conversation where I have to go. Like, it's too much information out there for you. I'm only limited so far to how much I'm willing to educate you. Go George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice. When you showed me the little white boy that was playing in the middle of the park and the cops jumped out like Rambo and shot him, then you can talk about what I'm talking about and I'll listen to you.
Right. And I mean, even Trayvon, hoodie. He had a hoodie on.
Hey, stand your ground only worked for him. How you stand your ground when you got a gun and they don't? And you following them. And this man running around signing Skittle packets.
That's so disrespectful, man. But yeah.
It's on a whole nother level. But you can do that though. You think somebody could have killed a little white girl and ran around signing something as like really adding value to it? I got an Arizona tea or a Starbucks cup.
I got a question for you. Another question for you, Chris, because I like where you're going with it because you bring a lot of stuff to light that I think a lot of people don't really have. They just don't know. Ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways because this conversation that we're having, a lot of my white friends would probably say they didn't know. Before all of this happened, they probably just didn't know. They just didn't know. So I would also say, brother, so when you're talking about the the things that we see with the Breonna Taylors, with the Trayvon Martin, with the George Floyds, how do you feel like when talking to our younger Black generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there is strength in seeing this type of content? Do you think that this empowers them to know what's going on? Or do you kind of focus more so on the building of, you know, who you are based on your understanding? Like, how do you tackle that? Like, do you, because my thing is this, I'll tell you my take on it. I believe that there's a lot of fear-based content that we are fed by social media. And I think when you ingest this fear-based content, biologically, it's a fact, it lowers your testosterone as a man. Like ingesting fear-based content, seeing losing, like to see losers, this is why like movies, they always have the winner at the end. They always show you the glory story, the victory. But to always see yourself lose, to see people like you lose, it actually makes you afraid. You know what I'm saying? It makes you afraid. When you see a police officer, you automatically, you know what I mean? Versus being able to walk in your own confidence, you know what I'm saying? Be able to say, like, I'm a man that, you know, maybe I know that I could be in a dangerous situation potentially because of the odds, but the strength of who I am, I can be able to handle this situation. And I'm wondering, like, kind of what is your take on how you talk to your boys? Because I know you got a very large group right now. How you talk to your boys about ideas about stuff like that?
I'm real country. So I always, you know, adding stuff that my grandpa gave me. And one of the things he told me, he's like, you're not as fearful of a fire when you got a fire extinguisher in the house. And I think when you come to that fear-based content, when you just leave that alone, that's all you give. Everything that you just said, from a biological, psychological to physiological level, all of that, it just does damage. It pushes a narrative. There's fear, there's anxiety. It causes all these other problems. It makes you less likely to go out with any type of boldness. It literally dehumanizes you. Because you like, how do I see myself as a human? Because not only do I see that fear-based content, I watch the person that killed that person have a GoFundMe for $1 million before the end of the night. So like it takes it to a whole nother level from that component. So the approach that I have with it, it goes back to the emotional intelligence piece. I try to encourage young men to be honest about how they feel about it. Because you got a lot of men, it's not so much just the content that messes them up, they internalize it. They bottle it up. Like one of the things I always talk about with my young men, we need to clear out that emotional closet. And I asked them, like, you know, when I was little, I used to clean my room by tossing everything in the closet.
Right.
The room looked good. It looked great. Hey, it looked wonderful. But what happened if somebody else come up? I'm trying to tell you, I got so good. You know, you do the little double dutch move, toss something in there, try to close that bad boy, not get your fingers cut off. Yeah. Like you do all of that. You pack it to the brim and either farther past its capacity. But eventually, the obstacle that we set with, especially with our young Black men, not only did you put stuff in that closet, you got other people putting stuff in the closet when you don't even know about it. So you got other things that are in there. You got things that are rotting, that are festering, that are causing problems. You got a bug infestation. You got all these other issues because it's a closet that you don't want to go into. But when somebody open that door, you don't have any type of control on what comes out, when it comes out. So you got young men that are snapping on other situations because they don't have the emotional intelligence to understand, I'm not really mad at this teacher, but they sound like my abusive mama. I really don't know how I cuss coach out because he walked away from me and it reminded me when my daddy walked out. They're not processing these things because all they do is try to become numb. You know, that's what you see in music. You got a lot of people that struggle even with the music conversation. It's like, man, this music trash in these youngsters right now. I'm like, okay, before you say that, you gotta understand what the focus is. Back in the day, back in the day, like we had a different focus with music. We listen to music to feel it.
Yeah.
Like we wanted to connect. We wanted somebody to tell our story.
The lyrics. Y'all actually listen to the lyrics.
We wanted the lyrics to tell a story. We wanted them to come out and talk about the struggles. When we listen to Tupac and Biggie and we listen to these people, it was like, oh man, oh, dear mama, yo, that's how I felt. Like we wanted to feel. Everything from our newer generation now, everything is about the exact opposite. I'm looking for apathy. I'm looking to not feel. You thinking it's just dumb. This is